to reclaim his crown and put a fourth trophy in his case. Give it up for Faker!
Seoul, November 19th, 2023. It's past midnight. The Gachyeok Sky Dome holds 18,000 people. Every seat is filled. Outside, across the city, tens of thousands more are gathered at viewing parties, and beyond that, streaming in from 237 countries. Over 6 million people are watching live. More than any esports event in history. They came to watch a video game. They came to watch League of Legends. And more than anything, they came to watch him. His name is Lee Sang-hyuk. He is 27 years old. He's been doing this since he was 17. He's had his lowest moments in this building and at his highest. Tonight, if he wins, and he's about to win, he will become something no player in this game's history has ever been. The first person to win 4 world championships. He doesn't pump his fist. He doesn't scream. He smiles. The kind of smile that comes out before you can stop it. Quiet, overwhelmed, real. The crowd chants his name. This is the man who turned a video game into a monument. This is the story of how he got here and what it cost him to stay. And when I tell you what he gave up to be standing on that stage, what his daily life actually looks like, I think it'll change how you see every single trophy behind him. Gangso District is the western corner of Seoul. It's not the Seoul you see in K-drama. It's the part of the city where people work. Factories, warehouses, apartment buildings, stacked against each other like books on a shelf. This is where Lee Sang-hyuk grew up. His parents divorced when he was young. He was raised by his father, Lee Kyung-jun, and his grandparents, alongside his younger brother. His father described him as quiet, introverted, a kid who kept mostly to himself, but not in a troubled way, the kind of quiet that comes with focus, the kind of kid who, when he found something interesting, disappeared into it completely. As a child, he didn't have a natural outlet for that focus. He didn't go to the local arcade with friends and play Tekken King of Fighters. By his own admission, he wasn't particularly good. He wasn't the kid who won every game at the arcade. He was just a kid having fun. But then came the PC room, then came MapleStory, then Warcraft 3, and something clicked. He started making custom maps in Warcraft, designing mechanics, testing them, redesigning them. He was 14, 15 years old, building game systems in his spare time because it interested him. Not because anyone asked him to, not because there was a reward, just because the puzzle was there and he wanted to solve it. The habit of self-directed obsession, chasing a problem until it yields, is the single most constant thing about Faker across his entire career. Everything else changes. The game changes, the meta changes, the teammates change. That habit never does. In December 2011, League of Legends launched its Korean server. For context, League had already been out for 2 years in the West, but Korea was a different market. Korea had a gaming culture that the rest of the world didn't. PC bangs, professional StarCraft leagues that drew national television audiences, a public that took competitive gaming seriously long before anyone else did. When League hit Korean servers, it spread fast, and a 15-year-old kid in Gangseoul District tried it. He was immediately unreasonably good. He didn't grind for years to get there. He didn't slowly develop. He rose to the top of the Korean ranked ladder faster than almost anyone in the game's history. And the Korean ladder is, by every serious estimate, the most competitive solo queue environment in the world. Getting to Challenger in Korea meant you were already one of the best players on the planet. He got there as a teenager, as a student, while attempting Mapo High School, the same school, as it happens, as another future pro, Kim Hyu-kyu, who would go on to play under the name Deft. The two likely didn't know what they were building yet. They were just playing a game. And then Sang-hyuk did something that took real nerve. He went to his father and he asked to drop out of school. He told his father he wanted to pursue professional gaming, that he thought he was good enough, that he didn't want to go to university. He wanted to play League of Legends. His father, by all accounts, did not immediately say yes. He sat with it, he thought about it, and then about a month later, he agreed. That decision is worth sitting with for a moment. A father in South Korea, a country where academic credentials are culturally loaded, where the university path is not just a life choice, but a social expectation. That father looked at his son and said, "Okay, I believe in you. Go."
Oh, look at the cleanse, look at the moves! Faker, what was that?
I mean, Gang looking to come in. Here comes your initiation. There is as Faker is not of this earth. He finds the engage. He finds everything T1 were looking for.
The scouts found him because you couldn't miss him. The alias he used back then was Gojian Pa, a name that roughly translates to old school style. He was known. People in the Korean solo queue talked about him the way you talk about a player you're not sure is real until you play against them. In early 2013, SK Telecom T1 signed him into their second team, SKT T1-2, later renamed SKT T1K. He adopted the name Faker as his professional handle. Nobody knows for certain why he chose it. He never really explained it. It's a strange name for someone who, as it turned out, was completely authentic at all times. He made his professional debut on April 6, 2013, a televised match in Seoul, his very first professional action on the big stage.
In this lane, because he's been typically a relatively weak player.
Whoa, Ambition! What? Faker just executes Ambition in that mid lane.
A solo kill against Kang, Ambition, Changyong, the realigning all-star mid laner. Not just a player he beat, the player, the name everyone knew at the time as the standard to measure mid laners by. Faker walked in as a 17-year-old nobody and killed the most famous mid laner in Korea on live television in his debut, and that was just the beginning. But before any of that, before the championships, before the nickname, before the people started using his name as a verb, there was one moment, one play, the kind of thing that happens once in a sport's history and defines everything that comes after it. Summer 2013, SKT T1K are in the finals of the OGN Champions Korean Summer Tournament. Their opponent, KC Roster Bullets. It's a tense series, and in one game, something happens that the League of Legends community will still be talking about a decade later.
Meadow Faker may be in trouble here. Deathmark tries to clean it up for Ryu. Oh, look at the cleanse, look at the moves! Faker, what was that? Faker with a huge play, the QSS!
Faker, playing Zed, finds himself alone in a side lane. Out of the fog of war comes Ryu on his own Zed. It's a mirror matchup, same champion, one has to die. Ryu ambushes him. By every calculation in that moment, Faker should lose this fight. What happens instead is something that people have dissected and rewatched so many times that the clip has its own cultural weight. Ryu dies, Faker walks away. The casters lose their minds. The crowd goes absolutely still for half a second. The specific silence of an audience that can't process what it just saw. It's called simply the play. There's no qualifier needed. In the context of League of Legends history, if someone says the play, there's only one. SKT won that series, won the title, and Faker, barely a year out of high school, 5 months into his professional career, was already the most talked about player in the game. Fall 2013, the Season 3 World Championship. It's held in Los Angeles, the Galen Center, the tournament that, at that point, was the biggest League of Legends event ever held. SKT T1K entered with a record that no one had seen before. They tore through the tournament, 15 wins, 3 losses, and 2 of those losses were in the group stage when the stakes were lower, when it mattered. They didn't drop. The final was against Royal Club from China. It was not competitive. SKT won 3-0 in what commentators described at the time as one of the most one-sided World Championship finals in the game's history. Faker was 17 years old. He was the best player in the world, and now he had a World Championship to prove it. You'd think that kind of success arriving that fast might change a person. inflate them, create the kind of ego that sports prodigies sometimes develop when nobody ever really defeats them. It didn't happen. And that's one of the things about Faker that's genuinely difficult to explain, because it's rare. He won everything in his first year and walked away from it apparently unchanged, still quiet, still focused, still, by all accounts of teammates and coaches, someone who just wanted to go back and play more games. The thing about Faker is, the wins never seem to touch him, but the losses, will come back to that. The 2014 season brought the first real stumble. SKT didn't qualify for Worlds. They lost the regional qualifier to Samsung Galaxy White, a team that would go to dominate that year's tournament. Faker gave up first blood in 3 straight games. It stung. But 2015 arrived with something more complicated. During the off-season, Chinese organizations came calling. The money being offered was, by reports at the time, close to $1 million in salary. For a 19-year-old from Gangseo, who had only recently stopped being a dropout on a gaming team, that's a life-altering number. He turned it down. He stayed with SKT. What followed were 2 of the most dominant years in competitive League of Legends history. 2015 brought a second World Championship. The finals went to 3 games against KOO Tigers. SKT dropped the game, which made the crowd nervous. But Faker had been here before. They won.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Stay healthy.
the victory broccoli. That's better than the Summoner's Cup right there. That's got iron in it.
That's raw. He's gonna do it.
That's the kind of minerals you need there, sir. That's what champions eat, is your broccoli.
And in his post-victory celebration, Faker did something that became immediately iconic for reasons nobody could quite explain. He walked to the front of the stage and took a big bite out of a raw stalk of broccoli, like a man who was hungry after a long day of work. 2016 was the peak. Faker won the IEM World Championship in January. He won the LCK Spring Split. He dominated the mid-season invitational, winning MVP. The first time he received that honor at an international tournament. He hit 1,000 kills in the LCK, the first player in the league's history to do so. And then he won Worlds again. By the end of 2016, the press had settled on a comparison. They were calling him the Michael Jordan of esports. Not a great esports player, not one of the best, the Jordan comparison. The one that means this person occupies a different category than their peers. In 2016, he was untouchable, which is exactly what makes what happened next so hard to explain, because within 2 years, the greatest player in the world would be sitting on the bench, replaced. And the team would be playing better without him. And for a brief moment, just a moment, it looked like the story might simply be about dominance, about someone who was so good that nothing could touch them. But League of Legends doesn't work that way, and neither does life. Before the 2017 season, Faker resigned with SKT. The contract was described in the press release as the best contract in esports history. Nobody disclosed the terms, but the message was clear. SKT was paying whatever it took. 2017 started well. LCK Spring title, MSI victory, the first team ever to win back-to-back mid-season invitationals. But the summer split saw cracks. The team struggled to build early leads. They lost the summer finals to Longxiao Gaming. The machine wasn't running clean. They made Worlds anyway. They reached the finals. Their opponent, for a second straight year, was Samsung Galaxy, a team that seemed to have spent the entire year studying SKT, building specifically to beat them. The series was 3-0, a sweep. Faker's first World Championship Finals loss. If you watch the footage of Faker after the match, you see something you almost never see from him. He's visibly distressed, sitting in his chair, not moving. His teammates had to come up to him, put their hands on his shoulders, guide him up to go shake hands with Samsung. He had been the best player in the world for 4 years. He'd won 3 world championships. He was 21 years old, and for a brief moment on that stage, he just looked like exactly what he was. A young man who had given everything to something and just watched it slip away. That image, and what came next, is what separates the story from a simple sports legend. Because the next 3 years was not going to be kind to Faker. '2018 was the worst year of Faker's career. Not a bad year, the worst year. The kind of year that forces you to confront who you actually are when the thing that defines you stops working. SKT rebuilt their roster after 2017. It didn't work. In the spring split, they couldn't find their footing. In the summer split, something happened that would have been genuinely unthinkable the year before. Faker was benched. Not sidelined by injury, not resting for a tournament, benched. In favor of a substitute, Chao Perrine Jung-sik, a player almost nobody outside of SKT had heard of. And here was the part that made it worse. SKT actually played better without Faker. Perrine had good synergy with the jungler. The team found a rhythm. The ESPN headline at the time read, "With Faker benched, SKT searches for identity." It was the most draining 3 words in that title, searches for identity, as if Faker had been the identity, and removing him from the lineup revealed that the foundation was shakier than anyone had realized. At the end of the year, in an interview with Invent Global, Faker said something that was jarring to read. He said, "I feel like a 4th place mid laner. Not the best player in the world, not even one of the best, a mid laner ranked, in his own assessment, 4th in his own region." He also said that he hadn't watched the 2018 Worlds, the tournament he would have been at had SKT qualified. He said he couldn't watch it. It hurt too much. What do you do with that? What do you do when you are, by any external measure, still a legend? But the game you spent your entire adult life mastering is currently being played better by people who are younger than you, faster than you, who've watched you and learned your patterns and found the holes. Faker's answer was, you keep going. But 2019 was going to test that resolve in a different way. What do you do when the game you've built your entire life around starts moving without you? Faker had an answer, but it took 5 more years to prove it, and the proof almost didn't come. SKT rebuilt almost entirely around Faker for 2019. They were both LCK splits, spring and summer. The domestic game was back, but internationally, a team from Europe kept appearing in their way. G2 Sports. Their mid laner was a Danish kid named Rasmus Beauregard Winther, playing under the name Caps. He was 20 years old. He was electric. He was fast. And twice in 2019, at the MSI semifinals and the World semifinals, Caps and G2 eliminated Faker and SKT. After the second time, someone in the community gave Caps a nickname. They started calling him Baby Faker. That nickname spread, and with it, a narrative. The sun was setting on Faker's era. He was being aged out. In a game where 23 is considered experience and 26 is considered veteran, Faker was 23 in 2019, already past the age where most players hit their ceiling. Korean caster June said it directly, in footage that circulated widely. They were saying the sun was setting on Faker's era. That isn't just a slump, he is being aged out. That is a brutal thing to say about a 23-year-old. In any other context, a 23-year-old at the beginning of something. In League of Legends, possibly the end. In February 2020, something unusual happened. SK Telecom T1 rebranded. They became simply T1, and as part of his new 3-year contract, Faker became a part owner of the organization. Not a small stake, a formal equity position. He was now a player executive. The T1 CEO, Joe Marsh, talked about it publicly. He described Faker's financial situation with what only can be called bewilderment at the level of discipline involved. Faker, he said, spends roughly $170 a month. T1 provides his housing, T1 provides his meals. His salary, estimated by credible sources at several $millions a year, goes almost entirely into investments. At one point, Marsh said something remarkable. He doesn't need money. There's literally a building he owns in Seoul called Faker Tower, a commercial office building near his childhood home in Gyeongseong district. He owns it. He rents it out. His company operates out of the top floor, and he still lives in the team house, eating team food, spending $170 a month. There's a version of the story where the building is the point, where you look at the money, the equity stake, the investments, and you say, he won. He figured it out, but there's a detail about how Faker actually lives day to day that I haven't mentioned yet. And when I do, the building stops being impressive and starts being something else entirely. But 2020 on, the rift was rough again. T1 missed Worlds entirely. The team rebuilt around him. New players, new coaching, and it still wasn't clicking. And then 2021 brought something that was, in its own way, more striking than any loss. In the spring split of 2021, Faker voluntarily removed himself from the lineup. He publicly acknowledged that he wasn't performing at the level he needed to. He took 3 weeks off. He said he needed to improve. Think about what it takes to do that. The best player in the history of the game, in the middle of a competitive season, pulling himself from the roster because he decided he wasn't good enough. Not injured, not told to sit out, choosing to because his standard for himself demanded it. He came back. He improved. And by the end of 2021, T1 were making roster moves that would slowly start to reshape what was possible. By 2022, the new roster had come together. Zeus at the top, Owner in the jungle, Faker in mid, Gumayushi, who in one of the stranger footnotes of this history is Faker's distant nephew through their shared clan lineage at AD carry. Carry in support. They called this core ZOFGK. It worked. T1 won the 2022 LCK. They made the MSI final. They made the Worlds final both times. They lost. The Worlds 2022 final was against DRX, a Korean team that had pulled off one of the greatest underdog runs in the tournament history. The series went 5 games. The peak viewership was 5.1 million concurrent viewers. At that point, the record for any esports event ever. And in Game 5, T1 lost. Faker had now been to 6 World Championship finals. He'd won 3, lost 3. The last 2 finals losses came in back-to-back years. Rumors surfaced immediately. Sources were saying T1 might break up the roster. Journalists were asking whether Faker had considered leaving T1 entirely, exploring free agency for the first time in his career. The window felt like it was closing. He re-signed with T1 for 3 more years. He stayed. He had always stayed. And then the game changed. The 2023 season opened well for T1, but in the summer split, Faker's wrist started to fail. The injury wasn't minor. He missed 4 weeks of play. In a season where every game matters in World Championship seeding, T1, without Faker, was visibly diminished. And there were real questions about whether he'd be back in time for Worlds, and whether he'd be at full capacity when he got there. A clip from an internal T1 documentary, footage that would later be released publicly, showed what was happening behind the scenes. Faker in physiotherapy, and in one sequence, Faker alone in the team facility, just him and a screen, grinding solo queue games on a wrist he could barely use because stopping wasn't something he knew how to do. He came back. He wasn't at 100%. He said so himself in an interview before the Asian Games in September. "My form dropped a lot after the injury," he said, "but I've been improving. The discomfort is getting better." His body had given him a warning. He didn't listen to it the way most people would. And a year later, in a moment that almost nobody expected and nobody was prepared for, the pressure he had been carrying for a decade finally showed itself. Not in an interview, not in a loss, on camera, in a way that made people genuinely worried about him. He has never been a liar about his limitations. He is honest in a way that is rare for someone whose entire public image is built on invincibility. And somehow, that honesty makes the invincibility more believable, not less. In September 2023, on the sidelines of Worlds preparation, Faker played in the Hangzhou Asian Games as part of the South Korean national team. And this mattered for a reason that had nothing to do with the trophy. South Korea has mandatory military service. Every able-bodied man between 18 and 28 must serve, roughly 18 months in the military. There is one path to exemption: represent the country in an international competition and win gold. The Olympics, the Asian Games. It's the same exemption that Song Hyung-min received after winning gold at the 2018 Asian Games. The exemption let him continue his career at Tottenham without a 1.5-year gap. For Faker, this was not abstract. He was 27 years old. He had no high school diploma, which meant he didn't qualify for standard military deferment. He had to do community service instead, a process that would have interrupted his career at precisely the wrong moment. The gold medal at the Asian Games was genuinely the only way out. South Korea won. They defeated Taiwan 2-0 in the League of Legends final. Faker himself didn't play the gold medal match. He was sick, down with the flu, but he played enough in earlier rounds to qualify for the exemption. And at the medal ceremony, the crowd in the arena chanted his name. Even ill, even standing off to the side, he was the one they came to see. He received the medal. He received the exemption. He went to Worlds. The 2023 World Championship was held in South Korea, Seoul, his city. A crowd that knew his name before he played a single game. T1's run through the bracket was controlled. Quarterfinals, LNG Esports 3-0. Semifinals, JDG Gaming 3-0. The finals brought Weibo Gaming, a Chinese powerhouse, into Go Check Skydome. T1 won 3-0. It wasn't even close. Faker compiled a 8-3-19 KDA across the 3 games. He didn't even win Finals MVP. That went to Zeus, his top laner, who was simply that good in the series. And Faker being Faker was genuinely happy about that. He said afterwards, "More than anything, I'm grateful that I could play in front of so many people." The peak viewership for that final was 6.4 million concurrent viewers. The previous record, 5.1 million, was set the year before at a final Faker lost. This time, the record broke for a win. He was now the first person to win 4 world championships at 27, in a game where 25 is the age when people start asking if you're past your prime. At the post-game press conference, someone asked if he had anything to say to his younger self, to the kid from Gangxiao who dropped out of high school and asked his father to trust him. He thought about it for a moment, and then he said, "I think I'd just tell him to keep going." Then came 2024, then came 2025, and what happened in those 2 years made even the 2023 redemption look like a preview. Faker won Worlds again in 2024. He was named Finals MVP. He won Best Esports Athlete at the Game Awards. He was inducted at the inaugural member of the LOL Esports Hall of Legends, receiving a custom Mercedes AMG SL 63 as part of the ceremony. He turned 28. But in 2024, something happened that the community found difficult to look at. During the LCK summer split, T1 lost a match to Gen G, a team they'd been struggling against all season. In the player booth afterwards, on camera, Faker turned to his teammates and began headbutting the wall, repeatedly, harder, until his teammate physically stepped in and held him back. The video spread instantly, and the reaction was not what you might expect. The community wasn't angry, it wasn't entertained, it was concerned, worried, suddenly reminded that the person they'd spent a decade calling a god was a human being carrying an enormous amount of weight, and that sometimes, in a soundproof booth, after a frustrating loss, that weight showed. Waking up to see the Faker video is really frightening. The amount of pressure on pros to stay at the top of their field is immense, even more so to do it for a decade straight. I hope he's okay. The video is a reminder that the story of Faker is not just a story about winning. It's a story about what winning costs, about what it takes to be the best at something for 10 years. In an industry that invented new ways to demand more of you every season, Faker addressed it, not with a grand statement, not with a press conference. He just went back to work. And in November 2025, in Chengdu, China,
T1 earning their legacy again and again and again. There can be no doubting it. 4 players on the Rift today, making the impossible possible. Owner, Faker, Gumayushi, Keria, and now Doran as well are world champions.
T1 defeated K1 Rolster to win their 3rd consecutive world championship, the first three-peat in the game's history. Faker's 6th title. He was 29 years old. When he returned to South Korea, South Korean President Lee Jae-myung personally awarded him the Blue Dragon Medal, the country's highest sporting honor. He sat with the Prime Minister to discuss South Korea's national cultural strategy. His name appeared on a postage stamp. A 2026 survey of Korean culture exports ranked him 5th among all Korean celebrities, the first esports player ever on that list. Above him, BTS, Lee Min-ho, Blackpink. The kid from Gyeongseo who asked his father if he could drop out of high school to play a video game was now on a list with BTS. There's a question that follows Faker everywhere, asked in 100 interviews over a decade, and he has always answered it the same way. Do you have a girlfriend? In 2020, on MBC's Radio Star, one of South Korea's biggest talk shows, the host asked him directly. Faker had to think for a moment, not because he was embarrassed, but because the answer took a second to locate. He said, "If you work as a professional gamer, you don't have a lot of personal time. I feel like if I started dating, it would be uncomfortable in a lot of ways, for both parties, so I just focus on my work instead." The host pressed further, "And before your career?" Faker said, "I didn't date when I was young either." He lives at the training facility. He eats team food. He spends $170 a month on personal expenses, because that's what there is to spend when you never leave. He has a building in Seoul with his name on it. He owns a 6% stake in one of the most valuable esports organizations in the world. He has 6 world championship trophies. He is a national treasure, and he has never been on a date. His old coach, the man who signed him up at 17 and built the dynasty around him, once remarked that the other players had girlfriends as their phone wallpapers. They talked about them. They thought about them the way young people think about things they want. Faker had League of Legends. That was the wallpaper. That was the thing he thought about. There was a monk-like quality to the way Faker lives that is genuinely unusual. Not because he's cold. People who know him describe him as warm, funny, self-deprecating. But because he made a choice somewhere in his teens to give everything to one thing. And unlike most people who said that, he actually did it. He didn't say it and have to. He did it completely. The result is that he is, at 29, the greatest player in the history of his game. The result is also that his adult life has been spent in a team house, playing solo queue games in rooms that all look the same, in a city he rarely leaves, building a legacy that most people can't fully measure because the context, 12 years, 6 championships, 10 league titles, doesn't fit cleanly into a single sentence. He re-signed with T1 in July 2025, 4 more years. He'll be 33 by the time that contract ends. In a game where 25 is considered old, where every new season brings players who have grown up studying him, he looked at the contract and he signed it. Someone asked him if he thought about retiring. He said, "I just want to keep going." That phrase, "keep going," appears in almost every version of the Faker story. His coaches say it. His teammates say it. He says it about himself. He never sounds like a motivational poster. It doesn't sound like an athlete performing resilience for the camera. It sounds like something simpler and more honest than that. It sounds like someone who genuinely doesn't know what they'd be if they stopped. The arena in Gyeongseo doesn't look like much from the outside. It's a part of the city that people don't visit unless they live there. There's an arcade nearby, or there used to be. The kind of place a quiet kid might go with his friends on the weekend afternoon to play Tekken and not win very much. Somewhere on the other side of that city, in a building with his name on it, at a desk in a room that looks like any other room, the greatest player in the world is still playing games. He always is.